All right, and we're back with Book 9 of the Odyssey by Homer. Just to recap, Book 8, pretty much Odysseus was at the palace of Alcinous. Alcinous put on a party for him, this honored stranger from a distant land. And they had lots of food and drink and songs. But then the songs that they were singing, like unzipped Odysseus, and he was like really sad because he was just remembering all of his trials and tribulations. And so Alcinous was like, "Cut the music, turn it off." And then they're like, "I know, to cheer him up, let's go out and just and play some games." And so they had a wrestle and threw the ball around for a bit. But Odysseus wasn't participating, and then the peeps were like calling him out, be like, "Yo, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I'll fight every one of you in here." And then they were just like, "Oh, chill, Odysseus, it's okay." Then Alcinous was just like, "Tell me your story, friend. Tell me your story. What ails you?" And then it looks like where book 9 is, where book 9 starts here. You can see there Odysseus is about to begin his tale. So he's about to begin his tale in book 9, how Odysseus visited the Lotus-eaters and the Cyclops. Should be an action-packed chapter. Let's buckle up. Then Odysseus began his tale. "What a pleasure it is, my lord," he said, "to hear a singer like this, with a divine voice. I declare it is just the perfection of gracious life. Good cheer and good temper everywhere. Rows of guests enjoying themselves heartily and listening to the music. Plenty to eat on the table, wine ready in the great bowl, and the butler ready to fill your cup whenever you want it. I think that is the best thing men can have. But you have a mind to hear my sad story, and make me more unhappy than I was before. What shall I begin with? What shall I end with? The lords of heaven have given me sorrow in abundance. First of all, I will tell you my name, and then you may count me one of your friends if I live to reach my home, although that is far away. I am Odysseus Laertiades, a name well known in the world as one who is ready for any event. My home is Ithaca, that bright, conspicuous isle with Mount Neriton rising clear. Out of the quivering forests. Round it lie many islands clustering close. Dolichion and Same and woody Zaxanos. My island lies low, last of all in the sea to westward. The others away towards the dawn and the rising sun. It is rough, but a nurse of good lads. I tell you, there is no sweeter sight any man can see than his own country. Listen now. A radiant goddess, Calypso, tried to keep me by her in her cave, and wanted me for a husband. Circe also would have had me stay in her mansion, and a clever creature she was, and she also wanted me for a husband, but she never could win my heart. How true it is that nothing is sweeter than home and kindred, although you may have a rich house in a foreign land far away from your kindred. Ah well, but you are waiting to hear of my journey home, and all the sorrows which Zeus laid upon me after I left Troy. From Ilion, the wind carried me to Ismaros of the Ciconians. There I destroyed the city and killed the men. We spared the women and plenty of cattle and goods, which we divided to give each man a fair share. I told the men we must show a light heel and be off. But the poor fools would not listen. Plenty of wine was drunk, plenty of sheep were killed on that beach, and herds of cattle. Meanwhile, some of the enemy got away, and shouted to other Ciconians, neighbors of their island, more men and better men, who knew how to fight from the chariot against a foe, and on foot if need be. A multitude of these men swarmed down in early the morning, as many as leaves and flowers in the seasons of a year. Surely Zeus sent us a hard fate that day, to bring trouble on a lot of poor devils. They drew up near the ships, and then came volleys on both sides. All through the morning, while the day grew stronger, we stood our ground and held them off, although they outnumbered us. But when the sun began to change course, about ox-loosing time, about noon, when the day's plowing is done, okay, ox-loosing time, the Ciconians got the upper hand and bent our line. 6 men-at-arms from each vessel were killed, and the rest of us were saved alive. From that place, we sailed onward, much discouraged, but glad to have escaped death, although we had lost good companions. Yet we did not let the galleys go off until we had called thrice on the name of each of our hapless comrades who died in that place. But Zeus Cloudgatherer sent a nor'wester upon our fleet with a furious tempest, bringing clouds over land and sea, and night rushed down from the sky. The ships were blown plunging along. The ships were blown plunging along. The sails were split into shreds and tatters by the violence of the wind. We let down the sails in fear of death, and rowed the bare hulls to shore. There we lay 2 days and 2 nights on end, eating out our hearts with hardship and anxiety. But when the 3rd day showed welcome streaks of light, we stepped the masts and hoisted new sails, sat still, while the wind drove us on while the wind drove us on, and the steersman held the way. Then I might have come safe to my native land. But the sea and the current and the northwest wind caught me as I was doubling Cape Malea, and drifted me outside Cythera. I tell you some of these names. 9 days after that, I was beaten about on the sea by foul winds, and on the 10th day we made land in the country of the Lotus-eaters, who get their food from flowers. Not the lotus grass, but some kind of berry like a small date or poppy pod. We went ashore and took in water, and the men made their meal on the spot close to the ships. When we had eaten and drunk, I sent some of them to find out who the natives were. Two picked men with a speaker. Before long they came across some of the Lotus-eaters. However, they did no harm to the men, only gave them some of their lotus to eat. As soon as they had tasted that honey-sweet fruit, they thought no more of coming back to us with news, but chose rather to stay there with the lotus-eating natives, and chew their lotus, and goodbye to home. I brought them back to the ships by main force, grumbling and complaining, and when I had them there, tied them up and stowed them under the benches. Then I ordered the rest to hurry up and get aboard, for I did not want them to have a taste of lotus. And say goodbye to home. They were soon on board and sitting on their benches and rowing away over the sea. From that place, we sailed on in low spirits. We came next to the Cyclopians, the goggle eyes, a violent and lawless tribe. They trust to providence, and neither plant nor plow, but everything grows without sowing or plowing. Wheat and barley and vines, which bear grapes in huge bunches, and the rain from heaven makes them grow of themselves. These Cyclopians have no parliament for debate and no laws, but they live on high mountains in hollow caves. Each one lays down the law for wife and children, and no one cares for his neighbors. Now, a low flat island lies across their harbor, not very near the land and not very far, covered with trees. In this are an infinite number of wild goats, for no man walks there to scare them away, and no hunters frequent the place to follow their toilsome trade in the forests and the hills. So it has neither flocks nor tillage, but unsown and unplowed, untrodden of men. It feeds the bleating goats. For the goggle eyes have no ships, with their crimson cheeks, and no shipwrights among them, to build boats for them to row in and visit the cities of the world like men who traverse the seas on their lawful occasions. Such craftsmen might have civilized the island, for it is not a bad island. It could produce all the kindly fruits of the earth. There are meadows along the shore, soft land with plenty of water. There might be no end of grapes. There is smooth land for the plow, the soil is very rich, and they might always stack a good harvest in the season of the year. There is a harbor with easy riding. No cable is wanted. No anchor stones or stern hawsers. You just beat your ship. And still the sailors have a fancy to go, and the wind blows fair. Moreover, at the head of the harbor, there is glorious water, a spring running out of a cave, with poplars growing all round. Some providence guided us in through the dark night, with not a thing to be seen, for a thick mist was about our ships, and the moon showed no light. It showed no light through the clouds. At the time, we did not catch a glimpse of the island. Indeed, we saw no long breakers rolling towards the land before our ships ran up on the beach. When they were safe there, we lowered the sails and got out on shore, and slept heavily until the dawn. As soon as dawn gleamed through the mist, we roamed about and admired the island. Then those kindly daughters of Zeus, the nymphs, sent down goats from the hills to give us all a good meal. We lost no time, got our bows and long spears out of the ships, divided into 3 bands, and let fly at the quarry. Very soon God gave us as much as we wanted. I had 12 ships with me, and 9 goats were given to each by lot, but 10 were picked out for me alone. So all day long we sat there feasting, with plenty of meat and delicious wine. For the good red wine was not all used up yet, but some was left. When we took the Ciconian city, each crew had supplied themselves with plenty in large 2-handled jars. We gazed at the country of the goggle eyes, which was quite close. We could see the smoke and hear the bleating of sheep and goats. When the sun set and darkness came, we lay down on the beach to sleep. But with the first rosy streaks of dawn, I called a meeting and made a speech to the men. "My good fellows," I said, "the rest of you stay here while I take my ship and crew and see who these people are, whether they are wild savages who know no law, or hospitable men who know right from wrong." So I went aboard and told my crew to cast loose. They were soon in their places and rowing along. The land was not far off, and when we reached it, we saw a cave there on a headland close by the sea. High and shaded with laurels, in which numbers of animals were housed by night, both sheep and goats. Outside was an enclosure with high walls round it, made of great stones dug into the earth, and the trunks of tall pines and spreading oaks. These were the night quarters of a monstrous man, who was then tending his flocks a long way off by himself. He would not mix with the others, but kept apart in his own lawless company. Indeed, he was a wonderful monster, not like a mortal man. A mortal man who eats bread, but rather like a mountain peak with trees on the top standing up alone in the highlands. Wait, that can't be the right. Not like a mortal man who eats bread, but rather like a mountain peak with trees on the top, standing up alone in the highlands. Then I told the rest of my men to wait for me and look after the ship. But I picked out 12 of the best men I had, and we set out. I took with me a goat skin of ruby wine, delicious wine, which I had from Marin Euanthides, priest of Apollo, who was the protecting god of Ismaros. We had saved him and his wife and child out of reverence, because he lived in the sacred grove of Phoebus Apollo. I had glorious gifts from him. He gave me 7 talents weight of worked gold. He gave me a mixing bowl of solid silver. But besides that, he gave me great jars of wine, a whole dozen of them, delicious wine, not a drop of water in it, a divine drink. Not a soul knew about this wine, none of the servants or women, except himself and his own wife, and one cellarer. When they drank of this wine, he used to pour 1 cup of it into 20 measures of water, and a sweet scent was diffused abroad from the mixer, something heavenly. No one wanted to be an abstainer then. I had filled a skin with this wine, and brought it with me, also a bag of provisions, for from the first I had a foreboding that I should meet a man of mighty strength, but savage, knowing neither justice nor law. We walked briskly to the cave, but found him not at home. He was tending his fat flocks on the pasture. So we entered the cave and took a good look all around. There were baskets loaded with cheeses. There were pens stuffed full of lambs and kids. Each lot was kept in a separate place, firstlings in one, middlings in another, yeanlings in another. Every pot and pan was swimming with whey, all the pails and basins into which he did the milking. The men begged me first to let them help themselves to the cheeses and be off. Next they wanted to make haste and drive the kids and lambs out of the pens and get under sail. But I would not listen. Indeed, indeed it would have been much better if I had. But I wanted to see himself and claim the stranger's gift. As it turned out, he was destined to be anything but a vision of joy to my comrades. So we lit a fire and made our thank offering, and helped ourselves to as many cheeses as we wanted to eat. Then we sat inside till he should come back with his flocks. At last in he came, carrying a tremendous load of dry wood to give light for supper. This he threw down inside of the cave with a crash that terrified us, and sent us scurrying into the corners. Then he drove his fat flocks into the cave. That is to say, all he milked, leaving the rams and billy goats outside the cave, but within the high walls of the enclosure. Then he picked up a huge great stone and placed it in the doorway. Not 22 good carts with 4 wheels apiece could have lifted it off the ground. This is a parody of the common phrase which describes how 2 good men could not have lifted a certain stone. So with precipitous rock used of cliffs and mountains. Okay. Such was the size of the precipitous rock which he planted in front of the entrance. Precipitous, right? Precipitous. Then he sat down and milked the goats and ewes, bleating loudly, all in order, and put her young under each. Next, he curdled half of the white milk and packed it into wicker baskets, leaving the other half to stand in bowls, that he might have some to drink for supper or whenever he wanted. At last, after all this busy work, he lighted the fire and saw us.
"Who are you?"
he called out.
"Where do you come from over the watery ways? Are you traders, or a lot of pirates ready to kill and be killed, bringing trouble to foreigners?"
While he spoke, our hearts were wholly broken within us to see the horrible monster, and to hear that beastly voice. But I managed to answer him. "We are Achaeans." Achaeans. Who knows? "We are Achaeans from Troy, driven out of our course over the broad sea by all the winds of heaven. We meant to sail straight home, but we have lost our way altogether. Such was the will of Zeus, I suppose. We have the honor to be the people of King Agamemnon Atreides, whose fame is greatest of all men under the sky, for the strong city he sacked and the many nations he conquered. But we have found you, and come to your knees, to pray if you will give us the stranger's due or anything you may think proper to give a stranger." "Respect the gods, most noble sir. See, we are your suppliants. Strangers and suppliants have their guardian strong. God walks with them to see they get no wrong." He answered me with He answered me with cruel words.
"You are a fool, stranger. Or you come from a long way off if you expect me to fear gods. Zeus Almighty be damned, and his blessed gods with him. We Cyclopeans care nothing for them. We are stronger than they are. I should not worry about Zeus if I wanted to lay hands on you or your companions. But tell me, where did you moor your ship? Far off or close by? I should be glad to know that.
He was just trying it on, but I knew something of the world and saw through it, so I answered back. My ship was wrecked by Poseidon Earthshaker, who cast us on the rocks near the boundary of your country. The wind drove us on a lee shore, but I was saved with these others. The cruel monster made no answer, but just jumped up and reached out towards my men, grabbed two like a pair of puppies and dashed them on the ground. Their brains ran out and soaked into the earth. Then he cut them up limb by limb and made them ready for supper. He devoured them like a mountain lion, bowels and flesh and marrow bones, and left nothing. We groaned aloud, lifting our hands to Zeus when we saw this brutal business, but there was nothing to be done. When Goggle-Eye had filled his great belly with his meal of human flesh, washed down with a draught of milk neat, he lay and stretched himself among the sheep. But I did not lose heart. I considered whether to go near and draw my sharp sword and drive it into his breast. I could feel about till I found the place where the midriff encloses the liver. But second thoughts kept me back. We should have perished ourselves in that place, dead and done for. We could never have moved the great stone which he had planted in the doorway. So we lay groaning and awaited dawn. Dawn came. He lit the fire, milked his flocks, all in order, put the young under each. Then he grabbed two more men and prepared his breakfast. That done, he drove out the fat flocks, moving away the great stone. With ease. But he put it back again, just as you fit cover to quiver. With many a whistle, Goggle-Eye turned his fat flocks to the hills, but I was left brooding and full of dark plans, longing to have my revenge if Athena would grant my prayer. Among all my schemes and machinations, the best plan I could think of was this. A long spar was lying beside the pen, a sapling of green olive wood. Goggle-Eye had cut it down to dry it and use as a staff. It looked to us about as large as the mast of a 20-oar ship, some broad hoy that sails the deep sea. It was about that length and thickness. I cut off a fathom of this, and handed it over to my men to dress down. They made it smooth. Then I sharpened the end, and charred it in the hot fire, and hid it carefully under the dung, which lay in great masses all over the floor. Then I told the others to cast lots who should help me with the pole, and rub it into his eyes when he was sound asleep. The lot fell on those four, whom I would have chosen myself, which made 5, counting me. In the evening, back he came with his flocks. This time, he drove them all into the cave, and left none outside in the yard. Whether he suspected something, or God made him do it, I do not know. Then he lifted the great stone, and set it in place, sat down and milked his ewes and nannies, bleating loudly, all in order, put her young under each, and when all this was done, grabbed 2 more men and made his meal. Good Lord. At this moment I came near to the Goggle-Eye, holding in my hand an ivy-wood cup full of red wine, and I said, Cyclops, here, have a drink after that jolly meal of man's mutton. I should like to show you what drink we had on board our ship. I brought it as a drink offering for you in the hope that you might have pity and help me on my way home. But you are mad beyond all bearing. Hard heart, how can you expect any other men to pay you a visit? For you have done what is not right. He took it and swallowed it down. The good stuff delighted him terribly, and he asked for another drink.
Oh, please give me more, and tell me your name.
Tell me your name this very minute. I will give you a stranger's gift, which will make you happy. Mother Earth does not give us wine in huge bunches, even in this part of the world. and the rain from heaven makes them grow. But this is a rivulet of nectar and ambrosia. Then I gave him a second draught. 3 drinks I gave him. 3 times the fool drank. At last, when the wine had gone to his head, I said to him in the gentlest of tones, Cyclops, do you ask me my name? Well, I will tell you, and you shall give me the stranger's due, as you promised. No man is my name. No man is what mother and father call me and all my friends. Then the cruel monster said, No man shall be the last eaten of this company, and all the others shall be eaten before him. That shall be your stranger's gift. Damn. As he said this, down he slipped and rolled on his back. His thick neck drooped sideways, and all-conquering sleep laid hold on him. Wine dribbled out of his gullet with lumps of human flesh as he belched his drunken slumbers. Then I drove the pole deep under the ashes to grow hot, and spoke to hearten my men that no one might fail me through fear. As soon as the wood was on the point of catching fire, it glowed white-hot, green as it was. I drew it quickly out of the fire while my men stood round me. God breathed great courage into us then. The men took hold of the stake and thrust the sharp point into his eye, and I leaned hard on it from above and turned it round and round, as a man bores a ship's timber with an auger, while others at the lower part keep turning it with a strap which they hold at each end, and round and round and round it runs. So we held the fire-sharpened pole and turned it, and the blood bubbled about its hot points. The fumes singed eyelids and eyelashes all about, as the eyeball burnt and the roots crackled in the fire. As a smith plunges an axe or an adze in cold water, for that makes the strength of steel, and it hisses loud when he tempers it, so his eye sizzled about the pole of olive wood. He gave a horrible bellow, till the rocks rang again, and we shrank away in fear. Then he dragged out the post. He dragged out the post from his eye, dabbled and dripping with blood, and threw it from him, wringing his hands in wild agony, and roared aloud to the Cyclopeans who lived in caves round about among the windy hills. They heard his cries, and came thronging from all directions, and stood about the cave, asking what his trouble was. "What on earth is the matter with you, Polyphemus?" they called out. "Why do you shout like this through the night and wake us all up? Is any man driving away your flocks against your will? Is anyone trying to kill you by craft or main force?" Out of the cave came the voice of mighty Polyphemus. "Oh, my friends, no man is killing me by craft and not by main force." They answered him in plain words. "Well, if no man is using force and you are alone, there's no help for a bit of sickness when heaven sends it. So you had better say your prayers to Lord Poseidon, your father." So basically, you're on your own, I guess is what they're saying. With these words away they went, and my heart laughed within me, to think how mere nobody had taken them all in with my machinominations. There is a subtle punning not only with which differ by accent alone, of course, this was clearly distinguished in speech, but with... See, that's the same thing, and I don't know what it means. Oh well. But the Cyclops, groaning and writhing in agony, fumbled about with his hands until he found the stone and pushed it away from the entrance. There he sat with his hands outspread to catch anyone who tried to go out with the animals. A great fool he must have thought me, but I had been casting about what to do for the best if I could possibly find some escape from death for my comrades and myself. All kinds of schemes and machinations I wove in my wits, for it was life or death, and perdition was close by. The plan that seemed to me best was this. The rams were well-grown, large, and fine, with coats of rich dark wool. In dead silence, I tied them together with twisted withies, which the monster used for his bed. I tied them in threes, with a man under the middle one, while the other two protected him on each side. So 3 carried each of our fellows, but for myself, there was one great ram, the finest of the whole flock. I threw my arms over his back and curled myself under his shaggy belly, and there I lay turned upwards, with only my hands to hold fast by the wonderful fleece in patience. So we all waited anxiously for the dawn. At last the dawn came. The rams and Billy surged out to pasture, but the nannies and ewes unmilked went bleating round the pens, for their udders were full to bursting. Their master, still tormented with pain, felt over the backs of all the animals as they passed out, but the poor fool did not notice how my men were tied under their bellies. Last of all, the great ram stalked to the door, cumbered with the weight of his wool and of me and my teeming mind. Polyphemus said as he pawed him over,
"Hullo! Why are you last today, you lazy creature? It is not your way to let them leave you behind. No, you go first by a long way to crop the fresh grass, stepping high and large, first to drink at the river. First all eagerness to come home in the evening, but now last? Are you sorry, perhaps, for your master's eye, which a damned villain has blinded with his cursed companions, after he had fuddled me with wine? No man who hasn't yet escaped the death in store for him, I tell him that if you only had sense like me, if you could only speak and tell me where the man is skulking from my vengeance, wouldn't I beat his head on the ground? Wouldn't his brains go splashing all over the place? And then I should have some little consolation for the trouble which this nobody of a no-man has brought upon me."
So he let the ram go, from him out of the cave. A little way from the cave and its enclosure, I shook myself loose first from under my ram. Then I freed my companions, and with all speed we drove the fat animals trotting along, often looking round, until we reached our ship. Glad indeed our friends were to see us, all of us that were left alive. They lamented the others, and made such a noise that I had to stop it, frowning at them and shaking my head. I told them to look sharp, and throw on board a number of the fleecy beasts, and get away. Soon, they were in their places, paddling along. But when we were about as far off from the shore as a man can shout, I called out in mockery, "I say, Cyclops, he didn't turn out to be such a milksop after all, did he? When you murdered his friends and gobbled them up in your cave? Your sins were sure to find you out, you cruel brute. You had no scruple to devour your guests in your own home. Therefore vengeance has fallen upon you from Zeus and the gods in heaven." This made him more furious than ever. He broke off the peak of a tall rock and threw it. The rock fell in front of the ship. The sea splashed and surged up as it fell. It raised a wave which carried us back to the land. Oh shit. And the rolling swell drove the ship right upon the shore. I picked up a long quant and pushed her off, and nodded to the men as a hint to row hard and save their lives. You may be sure they put their backs into it. When we were twice as far as before, I wanted to shout again to Goggle Eye, although my comrades all round tried to coax me not to do it. "Foolhardy man, why do you want to provoke the madman? Just now he threw something to seaward of us and drove back the ship to the land. And we thought all was up with us. And if he had heard one of us speaking or making a sound, he would have thrown a jagged rock and smashed our timbers and our bones to smithereens. He throws far enough." But I was determined not to listen, and shouted again in my fury, "I say, Cyclops, if ever anyone asks who put out your ugly eye, tell them your blinder was Odysseus, the conqueror of Troy, the son of Laertes, whose address is in Ithaca." When he heard this, he gave a loud cry, and said, "Upon my word, this is the old prophecy come true. There was a soothsayer here once, a fine, tall fellow, Telemos Eurymedes, a famous soothsayer, who lived to old age, prophesying amongst our people. No, prophesying amongst our people. He told me what was to happen, that I should lose my sight at the hands of Odysseus, but I always expected. That some tall, handsome fellow would come this way, clothed in mighty power. Now a nobody, a weakling, a whippersnapper, has blinded my eye after fuddling me with wine. Come to me, dear Odysseus, and let me give you the stranger's gift. Let me beseech the worshipful Earthshaker to grant you a happy voyage, for I have the honor to be his son, and he declares he is my father. He will cure me if he chooses, all by himself, without the help of blessed gods or mortal man." I answered at once, "I wish I could kill you, and send you to hell as surely as no one will ever unblind your eye, not even the Earthshaker." At this he held out his hand to heaven, and prayed to Lord Poseidon. "Hear me, Poseidon, Earthshaker, sea-blue chair. If I am truly thy son, and thou art indeed my father, grant that Odysseus the conqueror of Troy, the son of Laertes, whose address is in Ithaca, may never reach his home." Odysseus introduced himself in the proper Greek way, name, family, and address. The reader will notice how carefully the Cyclops repeats it to his divine father, that there may be no mistake, yet our editors call line 531 spurious. No, okay, if that's how they do it, that's how they do it.
But if it is his due portion to see his friends and come home again to his tall house and his native land, may he come there late and in misery. In another man's ship may he lose all his companions, and may he find tribulation at home.
This was his prayer, and sea-blue hair heard it. Then once again he lifted a stone greater than the other, and circled it round his head, gathering all his vast strength for the blow. The movements of putting the weight. And flung it. Down it fell behind our ship, just a little, just missed the end of the steering oar. The sea splashed and surged up as it fell, and the wave carried her on and drove her to shore on the island. When we came safe to the island, where the other ships were waiting for us, we found our companions in great anxiety, hoping against hope. We drew up our ship on the sand, and put the sheep of old Goggle-Eye ashore, and divided them so as to give everyone a fair share. But by general consent, the great ram was given to me. I sacrificed him on the beach to Zeus Cronides. It's probably Cronides. Zeus Cronides. Clouds and darkness are round about him, and he rules over all. I made my burnt offering, but Zeus regarded it not. For as it turned out, he intended that all my tight ships and all my trusty companions should be destroyed. We spent the rest of the day until sunset in feasting, eating full and drinking deep, and when the sun set and darkness came on, we lay to rest on the seashore. Then at dawn I directed the men in all haste to embark and throw off the moorings. They were soon aboard and rowing in good fettle over the sea. So we fared onwards, thankful to be alive, but sorrowing for our comrades whom we had lost. That's what happens when I don't know, Odysseus. You play silly games, you win silly prizes, I guess. Well, that's Odysseus for you. Wouldn't be a great conqueror without getting up to some stuff, I guess. Well, there you have it. That was Book 9 of The Odyssey by Homer. Next time we'll be checking out Book X, Book 10. So we'll see you next time.